Hello, everyone. I was part of a group that went to Cambodia a couple weeks ago. We were participating in a project called Water for Life, installing biosand filters for the local villagers. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction, then some of the other colleagues that went on the trip are going to talk a bit about what we did and about the biosand filters. But who was involved and why did we go? So we went with a local Singapore organization called Singapore International Foundation. This is just a group that participates all around the world in like dozens of countries. They partner up with local organizations. For this trip, we partnered up with Water for Cambodia. This organization has a mission to go and using kind of low-tech technology, improve the water quality. It was inspired by a fellow from Rhode Island, from America, like me. And he went to Cambodia in 2002, and when he was at one of the hospitals, he noticed that there was a lot of kids showing up with preventable waterborne diseases. So he set up this project called Water for Life. The Rotary Foundation, which he's a member of in Malaysia, and then in Rhode Island, they both contribute towards this project. And so this is like an ongoing project. They both install biosand filters, and then they also test the filters to make sure that they're actually doing their job and that people are using them properly. And then they go around to the villagers and they make sure that the villagers are like learning to read. They set up like local libraries. It's a really good group. The people that went, it was a team of about a dozen of us from all sorts of disciplines and groups within Arup, Singapore. And so this project was really not only about us going and building some of these filters, but also like immersing in the local culture and meeting some of them. And we went during rainy season, which in this area of the world is a very fertile area. We went to Siem Reap. You can see it was just flooded everywhere, so it was a good time all around.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a brief description of how the biosand filter works, just so you understand what it was we were installing. It's a very simple household water treatment system, which literally consists of a concrete container filled with sand and gravel, through which you pour the water in the top, it filters through the sand and gravel and comes out a pipe, and once you've installed it, it takes 2 to 3 weeks, well, up to a month to be ready, and then the water is clean. It filters out 99% of disease-giving or causing organisms out of it. There are a lot of processes involved in cleaning the water. I'm going to briefly go through them. I've got a lot of words on these slides, but the basic principle is there are biological and mechanical processes involved. And so literally you pour the water into the top and it filters through. And the obvious process, first of all, is simple mechanical filtration, where particles are trapped in amongst the sand pores. But they found that even in rapid sand filters, where there aren't any biological processes going on, particles much smaller than the sand pore size are being trapped. And that's because it's not just mechanical filtration. There's also a number of other processes going on. That's just tiny things. Things 100 times smaller than the pore spaces are being trapped. I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but there are basically picture the particles moving through the sand filter and in streamlines, and somehow they get drawn to the particles and attached to it. And there are a number of mechanisms at play. But entrapment, as opposed to entrapment by being trapped between the sand grains or by sticking onto the sand grains. Adsorption is where it sticks onto the sand grains. And this is caused by forces between them, the fact that some of them are actually sticky, all manner of things. But anyway, those are the physical processes. But as well as the physical processes, there are biological processes going on. Most of this happens in the top layer of the filter, where the majority of the microorganisms are trapped and they have access to oxygen because there's little amount of standing water on the top of the filter. But basically, there's all sorts of impurities are broken down, they're eaten, there's natural die-off, there's competition for food, there's temperatures that are less hospitable to them, etc. So, without going into too much detail, all the disease-causing organisms are eventually consumed, poisoned, naturally die off, eaten, until they're degraded into harmless, water and a few other inorganic salts, basically things that aren't harmful to people. Right, well that's it. But I'll just finish by saying the beauty of a simple household filter, which is easy to install and there's really very little maintenance involved. But there's no maintenance involved if you leave it and just keep using it every day, making sure it's wet and the raw water's flowing through it every day to keep all the processes going. It slowly actually treats the water better and better. The more blocked and dirty it becomes, the actually cleaner the end product is. Although it slowly becomes a bit of a trickle because all the pores are blocking up and the water flow goes very slowly, which means they do have to clean it. But again, you literally cleaning it's very simple. They're taught what to do when we install it, and it's a very safe way to ensure they get clean water. Okay.
Thanks, Nikki, for the very interesting explanations. And I'll give you a brief summary on what we have done and how we install the filter. So before we depart to Cambodia, Siem Reap, we were invited by SIF for a brief pre-departure briefing to let us know what to expect in Cambodia and what precaution to take when we were there. Sorry. When we first arrived there, we were greeted by the staff of the center. We were given a brief presentations on the background of Cambodia and the background of the center and what we are going to do and how we are going to do what we are going to do in these few days. And after the presentation, we head off to the backyard of the center, which is where they construct the body of the water filter. We start off by preparing the mold for the body. You can see here, Berlina is happily painting a layer of oil on the mold, on the inner surface of mold, is to make sure that the mold can be easily removed when the concrete is set later on. When we have applied the layer of oil, we then assemble the mold together with bolts and nuts just before we start mixing the concrete. When we have done mixing the concrete, we then pour and fill the mold with concrete and compacting at the same time. And when everything is done, we wait for the concrete to set and remove the casing from the concrete filter. And the whole process starts again and again and again. And on our second day, second and third day, which is the most interesting part of the whole program, we started installing the water filter. So we arrived at one of the village in Siem Reap. We then were divided into 3 groups to work on each individual family. We start by washing, cleaning the coarse and fine gravels and sand, and also the water filter itself, the body itself. So when everything is clean, we then place all the gravels and sand into the body itself. And for each layer of gravel we place inside the filter, the thickness of the gravel and the sand is measured with a blue stick with markings on it to make sure that the desired thickness is achieved, so that the water filter will work properly later on. We then start to disinfect the outlets of the water filter by adding chlorine solution using a funnel. We try to raise the funnel slightly above the water filter so that all the solution will go through the hose and down to the bottom of the filter. So when we have done with disinfecting the outlets, we then fill the water filter with water and we start our flow rate test. This is a very important procedure to make sure that, because you do not want the flow rate to be too fast or too slow. If the flow rate is too fast, that means that the water filter is not working properly. It's probably we washed the sand too much and we washed away all the fine particles, so it's not trapping the what we want, all the dirty stuff. So the sand has to be replaced. But fortunately, all the filters that we have built, 20 of them has passed the flow rate test, and all will be ready to be used after the installation in 3 weeks' time.
Okay. Right, so I'm just going to bring the presentation to a close by going through, just summarising what we achieved, what our contribution was, and then by explaining how we as a team benefited from participating in this. So in terms of our material contribution, that's quite an easy one. We were able to construct, or we were helping the local guys construct 20 filter casings in the backyard of the Water for Cambodia office, and we actually installed 27 filters in the rural villages. I think a really important question to ask is how, and indeed whether, the Khmer people actually benefited from us foreigners being there. It was something that I was worried about before I participated in this program, because I was worried that we would be seen as invading their privacy and maybe be using it as some kind of odd kind of tourism experience. But actually it wasn't like that at all. We received a very, very warm welcome from the families that we were working with and that we were helping. And through conversations I had with the installers that we were working with, they explained that actually they see foreign involvement as a very, very positive thing. It makes them feel that their country has a future, and it helps them to understand that actually people beyond their community actually care about how they live their lives and their quality of life. I think other benefits, obviously, Arup were able to fund a lot of the filters that we installed. Each filter only costs about $50 US, so the money that Arup contributed to the program must have gone quite a long way. And then, obviously, we were able to support and work very closely with the local NGO staff. In order to understand how we benefited from it, I actually sent an email out to the team once we got back and asked people what they thought and what their reactions were. And the first one here is one that cropped up on quite a few responses. It was people realizing that it's possible to be happy regardless of status or financial wealth, and I think that's a very important lesson, particularly for people living and working in Singapore, where you've got the Singapore dream, which is all about making more and more money and not necessarily about being happy. And the Cambodian people are certainly very, very happy, and that really made it a very special experience and taught us a very important lesson. It also made us understand that actually it's quite easy to make a positive and lasting contribution to people who are living in the developing world. And actually building friendships with the local installers was quite important as well. That was something that we benefited from, and I'm certainly going to keep in touch with the guys that I made contact with. Quite a few people who took part actually said that it was a huge help to their aspirations, and it had a positive impact on what they wanted to do in the future, to better understand different cultures and work with people from different backgrounds, and also a desire to have to ensure that our work in Arup has a positive impact on the whole of society. So just to conclude, it was a very, very worthwhile project, which I think reinforces Arup's fundamental values as a company. and obviously there were benefits to us as volunteers and to the local people that we were working with and helping in the villages. And I think we strongly feel that Arup should continue to support these very worthwhile projects. So that brings the Water for Cambodia part of the presentation to an end. I don't know if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask.